The Tesla Cybertruck. We've got one and we're going to put it through its paces, but we're not doing it alone. We've brought two of the Cybertruck's big EV truck rivals, the Ford F150 Lightning and the Rivian R1T. This is going to be a fascinating comparison. Let's get into it. Our Cybertruck for this test is a customer-owned dual-motor truck which starts from $82,335. However, with the Foundation Series pack limited to just the first 1,000 trucks, this one costs a whopping $102,235. In order to make it a fair fight, we aligned it with a $71,700 dual-motor Rivian R1T, upgraded with the Max Pack battery and Performance Pack options at a total cost of $102,850. The equivalent luxury lifestyle offering from Ford is the $93,990 Ford F150 Lightning Platinum. Ours cost $94,135. The first thing we did was hand the three trucks over to our test team to run them all through their paces. Up first, 0 to 60, which the Cybertruck dispatched in 3.8 seconds, versus 3.3 for the R1T and 4.1 for the F150. Quarter-mile times fall similarly in line, 12.1 seconds for the Rivian versus 12.4 for the Tesla and 12.8 for the Ford, with the Cybertruck posting the highest trap speed. We also tested the trio's braking distances as well as performing a figure-8 loop in each truck, which pulls together acceleration, braking, and cornering dynamics into one helpful test. In both of these, the Cybertruck came third, though it's worth noting that currently Cybertruck is only available with off-road focused tyres, whereas the Rivian and the Ford were both on street tyres. After all that, it was time to hit the streets. Highway driving, range testing, tow, payload, and off-roading. We did it all in order to pick a winner. Frank, Jason, Scott, you three have had the, I think, enviable task of driving these three trucks around for the last couple of days. Talk to me about it.
There's a big difference between the Ford and the other two, just because of the construction of it. It does feel like a traditional body-on-frame pickup truck. It doesn't have the same rigidity and tightness. It feels like the center of gravity is higher than the other two. So the other two drive a lot more like sporty SUVs than that. And personally, I think the Rivian handled the best, whereas the Tesla, I think, had slightly better ride quality.
Like Scott said, the body-on-frame F-150 definitely drives like a truck. It's a proper American pickup truck. Where these two, well, you know, they're very sporty. And it's fun to drive. The Cybertruck was like a video game on the highway. Just point and shoot, and it goes, and it's just where you want it to be, whenever you want it to be there.
The F-150 has a much wider, broader base that it's trying to cover. So we've got work trucks available on this one. This is a Platinum, so this is the lifestyle version. This was kind of a lifestyle pickup truck comparison. We're looking for the best lifestyle pickup truck. And so this one struggles a little bit in that way because of everything it needs to also have the big giant towing capacity and the cargo capacity for the work job it does.
You may not be bothered about fingerprints, but one thing we're all interested in is range. As we do with all EVs, we charge these three to 100% before taking them on an extended highway cruise, maintaining a steady 70 miles per hour, simulating real-time, real-world numbers. Whilst none of the trucks hit their EPA or manufacturer estimates, the numbers did remain consistent between all three. We also hitched trailers to all three to determine how towing affects range. Our 110-mile loop for this test consisted of 65% highway driving and 35% rural roads, averaging 50 miles per hour. As you can see, the result was that real-world range dropped by about a third in the Ford and the Tesla, and by a quarter in the Rivian, with each ending up at about half the EPA combined range figure. Let's turn our attentions to build quality. So much has been made of the Cybertruck and all Teslas and their build quality. How did you guys find the Cybertruck to be when you got it up close to it in the metal, and how does it maybe compare to the other two trucks we have here?
Poorly. I'm sorry, everything good we said about the new Model 3 update has been completely undone by this truck. There's multiple panels. I can see from here panels that don't line up correctly, corners of panels that stick out where they shouldn't. It's it's right back to old Tesla and the way we used to give them a hard time.
And I guess, we shouldn't be shocked that even after a prolonged, protracted, way longer than expected gestation period, it's not there yet.
And that doesn't even bring up the cleanliness issue of this truck. You so much as look at it funny, and it's got fingerprints that do not come off. Like, it's going to be an issue with people owning this truck long term.
Yeah, none of the cleaning supplies we have here will take all the fingerprints off of this truck.
We could not get this truck clean for the life of us, and we are pros at cleaning trucks.
Right. If you're the least bit OCD, this is definitely not the truck for you.
Let's turn our attentions to the interiors. Of course, we're familiar, I think, with the Ford's interior and with the interior of the R1T. How does the Cybertruck's interior compare to the interior of these two trucks?
Tesla has been very successfully rebranding minimalism as like chic and modern and forward thinking, but this truck it takes it so far that it feels unfinished. I mean, the dashboard's a perfectly straight line. Everything in it is straight lines and hard corners. It looks more like a movie prop than actually a finished interior. And I know that was to mirror the exterior design, but it is so stark and so barren that it looks like they didn't have the time or money to finish designing an interior, and they just had to put something together that worked.
How did you get on with the rear visibility?
I mean, it's atrocious, and it's laughable because they actually put a tiny little microscopic rear view mirror in there that does not look out the back. Come on, really, for $100,000, we can't afford a video mirror?
I think we've all kind of struggled or, been challenged at certain times by various Tesla models and their screen infotainment system, the menus on menus on menus. How does the Cybertruck kind of stack up to that?
If you're familiar with a Tesla, if you drive a Tesla, like, it will be familiar to you, but it is, again, taking things to the extreme. Like the new Model 3, there's no stock for the turn signals. It's buttons on the steering wheel, and they're both on the same side of the steering wheel. There is no stock to put it in gear. It's a swipe on the screen. So there's no stock to turn on the windshield wipers. To turn on the windshield wipers, you have to push a button on the steering wheel and then go over to the screen and select what speed you want because there's no automatic setting.
So what happens if it starts raining violently all of a sudden, or you ford a big puddle, thing of that nature?
You go through a puddle like I did and cover the windshield completely because the splash goes right up onto the windshield. And suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I'd have had my thumb on that button. But
exactly right. And certainly, one of the points of interest that I had coming into this comparison test with regard to Cybertruck was the steer-by-wire. So, of course, Tesla have gone from 12 volts to 48 volts, which have allowed them to put this steer-by-wire into action.
Well, more than anything, the four-wheel steer that Tesla's equipped the Cybertruck with has been the game changer. Towing a trailer and reversing a trailer, we all thought it would just be a squirrely mess, and it actually worked phenomenally well. The steering took such slight inputs on the yoke that it was easy to maneuver the trailer in a very tight space. It worked very well in that regard.
It's the one spot where it shines the brightest, I think, because at parking lot speeds, you're used to having to, palm the wheel or hand over hand to make a tight, right-hand turn into a parking space. Well, this one, a lot of times until you get used to it, you turn the wheel and then you turn way too sharply and then you have to turn it back and quickly, so you end up kind of like jerking around trying to figure out the right input. But then once you get up to highway speeds, well, when you're on the highway, you don't make big, giant steering in any other vehicle. So then it's just sort of like normal steering on the highway. Yeah. So it's kind of more of a novelty than anything, but it does work, and it does
I
really
have
help.
noticed, though, that if you're one of those people who every now and then wants to, steer with their knee, no, cannot be done. Yeah. So don't carry out any food that takes two hands in a Tesla Cybertruck.
But it also, the yoke is so small, it almost feels like steering with a Nintendo Switch. Like when you're playing Mario Kart and you're really getting into it, it's a bit like that, which just seems very incongruous with such a big vehicle, but it's part of the novelty of the whole system.
This one it had that same nimble, tighter steering, smaller steering wheel than this one.
Yes.
And so I felt like I could place this one a little more accurately than I could this one.
Right, and actually the visibility, I think, is another big and interesting point, which brings us on to where we are now. We've been off-roading in the vehicles this afternoon, so tell me how these three stacked up against one another on this trail that we've been doing.
Well, the Rivian is built for this. This is their niche, it's what it does, and it does it well. It's barely spun a tire, it's not lifting a wheel, it's got articulation for days. The opposite is true of the Cybertruck. But it also has front and rear locking differentials that are not activated yet. They're coming soon. So with those, it might do better. It's got off-road tires that have less traction than our street all-terrains. So it's been a struggle.
And I think a lot of the difference is in the traction control programming, because the Rivian, like we said, is on its street tires, not its all-terrain option. It has open differentials, has no lockers or anything, and it walked right through all of these obstacles, no problem. The Cybertruck has what look like all-terrain tires, even though they're not very effective. And in theory, it has locking differentials someday, but when it gets into a situation where a wheel is lifted or it's got low traction, it really struggles to figure out what to do. It has to stop and think about it, and it spins some wheels and spins a wheel in its computer a bit, and then eventually figures out where to go. Whereas the other two, and the Ford really impressively, since it's also on street tires and has the least clearance of anything, sort of just walk right through things because they figure out much more quickly what to do in low grip situations.
We put almost 1,000 miles on these 3 trucks over the course of 5 days in order to work out which was best.
We've got 3 very different EV trucks. This, of course, the Rivian R1T was our 2022 Motortrend Truck of the Year. Over there, the F150 Lightning, our 2023 Motortrend Truck of the Year. And then we've got the Cybertruck.
I mean, the deliberations went a lot like this conversation, a lot of going back and forth over what the strengths and weaknesses, but also trying to put them in a specific context. They are not going to show up on a lot of job sites doing heavy construction. They are lifestyle trucks. They are meant to look good and stand out and drive more like SUVs than like traditional pickup trucks. So putting that all together, you sort of had to weigh how important is off-road capability, how important is towing, capability and things like that. So after all of that, we, sort of came down to an agreement.
In third place is the Legacy F150. Still a wonderful product. It's a great, and this is the comfortable choice. And most anyone who is interested in this one wouldn't look at the other 2.
In second place, the Tesla Cybertruck.
We feel like there's enough things that are compromised because of the design that have made things a little bit worse and compromised its capability. So
Yeah, after we placed it all together and fought amongst ourselves, it was pretty clear that the Rivian R1T rose to the top. Does everything well that we have asked of it. It is comfortable enough in its operation. It's not as wildly different as the Cybertruck. It handles well, it rides well, it tows well, and has phenomenal range. It's just a very well-rounded pickup truck.
So there you have it. The winner of this comparison test is the 2024 Rivian R1T.